Hello and welcome to part 4 of lesson 5. This session is about the work template configuration. The work is the operation that is performed by the warehouse worker to perform a specific warehouse process, like picking items for sales orders or receiving items in purchase order flow. In order to manage and define a specific warehouse process, then you should define a work template. So the work template determines what work is performed and how the work is done for each warehouse process. The work templates could be vary from one company to another depending on the warehouse flow. Let's see these different scenarios of sales order picking flow, and then we'll review how to configure work templates to manage these different scenarios. The sales order picking process could be simple as it could be performed in two steps. The first is the pick step, where the warehouse picker should pick the items from the picking locations. And then the second step is the pod step, where the items should be placed in the bay door. This could be a more complex process in 4 steps by placing the picked items first in a staging location before moving the items to the bay door. Typically, this process is performed for quality management or probably for any value-added services like palletizing the items. So in that case, a warehouse worker will pick the items first from the picking locations and then will place the items in a staging area. Then someone else will pick the items from the staging area and move them to the bay door. Now let's review the available options that could be used to manage and define the work process. So first, when you create a new work template, you should select and specify work order type. Each work order type in this list is managing a specific warehouse process flow, and we're gonna review every one in the warehouse management process course. In order to create a new work template, click new and then give it a name and description. You should also specify the sequence number. The sequence number determines the position of each work template while the system is evaluating the available work templates and until the criteria that's specified here in the edit query will met. Definitely the work template that has the lower sequence number will be applied first. Once you define and save the work template, then the valid option indicates whether this work template is valid or no. Then you can use the option of automatically process to automatically process and complete a work when the wave is released. This option is typically used where the real item movement is not required, but still you should pick the items and close the work. After that, you can specify a default work pool ID for the work template. So the works that will be generated from this work template will be tagged by this value. You could benefit from this option to group the works by the pool ID in the mobile application. You can also use the work pool ID in the edit query to filter the works by the work pool ID. Now let's navigate to the work pools form and see how to define a new work pool. So the work pools form found in warehouse management module, setup, work, then work pools. In order to define a new work pool, click new and then give it work pool ID and description. You can determine and specify the work priority for each work template. So the work priority value is used while processing the works in the mobile application. So in system directed menu item, the system can suggest the next work as per the work priority. Moving to the work template details, where you can define the work steps. We have 4 steps in this work template that will be performed in this sequence. The first step, to pick the items from the picking location. Then, in the second step, to put the items into a staging location. Then, to pick the items from the staging location. And finally, to put the items in the bay door location. When you define a work step, you should select a work type. Mostly we're gonna use pick and put. However, some other options could be used for different process, like for example, print, where you can print the labels. We're gonna review the available options as possible in the warehouse management process course. In the custom work type, you can select a code to configure custom mobile device menus. This option works when the work type is custom. Now let's review the available options that control the work steps. The first option is mandatory. This option indicates that the step must be performed. The steps that have not been marked as mandatory could be skipped. Let's review how to skip the optional steps. The optional steps could be skipped from the wave, shipment, or the load forms. Now we are in the wave form, and first let's review the generated work. So under related information, I'll click work, and here we can see that we have 4 steps, where the first pick and last put mark it as mandatory. Now let's see how to skip the staging process or staging steps. I'll go back to the wave and then I'll click skip non-mandatory. Now let's go back to the work and we can see that the staging steps marked as skipped. The second option is stop work. This option is used to create a break or stop between the work steps to indicate if this work should be completed in one shot or in multiple steps. In this work template, a warehouse worker should first pick the items from the picking locations and then put it into the stage location. And at this moment, these steps will be marked as closed. Then another warehouse worker will pick the items from the staging location and then put it into the bay door. If the stop option is not marked, then when the first worker put the items into the staging area, the mobile application menu item will be moved without stop to the next step to pick the item from the staging location and put it into the bay door. The next option is freeze. This option works when the stop work is marked on the work step. This option indicates that the work line will be blocked and you need to release the work before you can process the work on the mobile device. Now let's review this demo and see how to process sales order picking work when the stop work and freeze options are enabled. I just created sales order and then I release it to the warehouse, so this work has been generated. I'll copy the work ID and then I'll navigate to the warehouse management mobile application and I'll open up the sales order picking menu item. Here I'll enter the work ID and then the system asked me to enter or scan the license plate that has the on hand of this item. So I'll go back here and scan the license plate. Then I'll confirm, click OK, and then I'll deliver to the pot location, which is the stage location. And at this moment, the work marked as completed. If I refresh here now, you will see that these lines have been marked as closed. The steps marked as closed since we have a stop work at this step. Right now, it's supposed that the second warehouse worker should pick the items from the staging location and put it into the bay door. I'll copy the work once again. I'll navigate to the warehouse management mobile application and open the menu item of sales order load. I'll scan the work ID here and now this error message pop up. Current work is frozen. And this is due to the fact that we have the freeze option. So right now we should release this work. So I'll go here to the work tab and then I'll unblock the work. Right now, this work has been unblocked and I can go back to the mobile application, scan the work once again, and then I can complete the process. So right now, I'll pick the items from the staging location and then I'll put it into the bay door. If I go back right now and refresh, so now these steps mark it as closed. The next option is the directive code, and the directive code is used to link the work steps to the location directive. So here in the pod step, I specified here stage, and then in the second and last pod step, I specified bay door. Then in the location directive, in the step of pod stage, I specified here stage, and then I selected here staging locations. Then in the pod into bay door rule, I selected here bay door, and then I specified the bay door location in the location directive actions. The next option is the work class ID. The work class ID is used to link the work lines to the menu items on the mobile device, where you can specify the types of works that those menu items can process. So here in the sales picking steps, I selected SO pick, and in the loading steps, I selected SO load. Then in the mobile device menu items, I created two menu items. The first one called SO pick, and I selected here in the work classes SO pick. This means this menu item will be used only to process the works that are linked to work class ID SO pick. And I created another one for the SO load, and I linked this to work class SO load. Now let's navigate to the work classes form and see how to manage and define work classes. So the work classes form found in warehouse management module, setup, work, then work classes. In order to create a new work class, click new and then give it a name. So I'll create a one, for example, for the purchase order put away process. So I'll give it a code PO put away, and I'll use the same as description, and then you should select a work order type. So this will be used for the purchase order process. Then in this tab, you should select valid put location types. This is optional, but you can select valid put location types for this process. So I'll select here, for example, the bulk and picking locations. One of the significant features while configuring the work template is the work break. The work break controls when the system should create new work based on group by criteria. Think about a wave of multiple shipments. If you are not considering a work break, then a consolidated work for the whole wave will be generated. However, by using the work break, you can break and group the works by the shipments, so a separate work will be generated for each shipment. You may consider some other scenarios according to the business process and utilizing the available fields. So for picking efficiency, you may group the works by a specific location or a specific warehouse zone, so a separate work will be generated for each zone. You can split or break the work header by two options. The first one by specifying maximum values of certain options like number of picking lines, total quantity, weight, volume, and so on. With this option, the work header will be split when the maximum value is reached. The second option by using the work header break feature. So first, you should specify the sorting fields of the work template, then you can group the work by these fields. Now let's see a quick demo on how to split the works by the maximum values. So first, I'll navigate to the work templates form that found in Warehouse Management module, Setup, Work, then Work Templates. Then I'll navigate to the General tab where you can specify the maximum values on work header level and work line level. When you specify maximum values on the work line level, like maximum volume, weight, or quantity, and when it comes to specify the quantity, you should specify the maximum quantity and the unit of measure. Then this will ensure that the work line will not exceed this maximum value, and the first work line that exceed the maximum value will be split in a new work header. You can also specify the maximum values on the header level. So the work will be split when the maximum value of total work lines is reached. So here in the work header maximum, you can specify the maximum estimated pick time in seconds or maximum number of pick lines in a single work, or you can specify maximum total inventory quantity, total volume, total weight in a single work. So let's say the maximum quantity per work line is 3 eaches, where the maximum total inventory quantity per work is 18. So this will ensure the work will be splitted either when the work line is 3 or above, or when the total inventory quantity within one work is 18 or above. Then I created some sales orders with different scenarios, like this sales order where the first sales order line is 1 each, the second one 1 each as well, and the third line is 2 eaches. For this sales order, I will not expect that the work will be splitted since none of the maximum quantity of work line or header is exceeded. So let's review the generated work. And here we can see that the work has been generated for the 3 sales order lines. Here we have 1, 1, and 2, and the total pick quantity is 4. Then I created another sales order where the first order line is 1 each, and the second sales order line is 3 eaches, and the third sales order line is 2 eaches. So for this sales order, I will expect 2 works that will be generated. The first one that contains the first and second sales order line, since the second sales order line is 3 eaches. So this is met the maximum quantity per work line, and another work that will be generated for the third sales order line. Now let's review the generated work. So I'll click Warehouse Work Details. And here we have one work that has been generated for the first and second sales order line, and the second one that has been splitted and generated for the third sales order line. And now let's review the second option on how to break or split the work headers using the work header breaks. The work header breaks button will be active once you specify the sorting criteria of this work template. So I'll click Edit Query, and here in the sorting, I'll select Shipment ID. I'm gonna split the works by the shipment ID, and I'll select also the location for the sorting purposes. So I'll select location, and then I'll click OK, click Yes, and then the work header break button is active. Here in the work header break, you can select which field will be used to group by or to split or break the work. So in our scenario, I'm gonna break the work by the shipment ID. So a separate work will be generated for each shipment ID. And I will not mark the group by this field on the location level since I'm gonna use the location level only for the sorting purposes. So a separate work will be generated for each shipment ID, and the picking lines of this work will be sorted ascending by the location ID. Now let's review this demo and see how the work header break works. I just created two sales orders, the first one for United Group customer with these items, and the second sales order for Adventure Work customer with these items. Then I released post sales orders to the warehouse. So two shipments have been generated and added to this wave. Then I processed this wave. So right now I would expect that two works will be generated for each shipment. So right now we are on the wave form. Let's review the created works. So under related information, I'll click work, and here we have two works. The first one that has been created for this shipment of the sales order, and here on the lines we can see that the picking lines have been sorted by the location ID. And the second work that has been generated for this shipment and this sales order, and also the picking lines have been sorted using the location ID. Once you manage the work configuration, now let's review the available options for work that are available in the warehouse management parameters. Here you can manage the work-related logs and some default options like the default user ID that will be used as default user for the automatic transactions, and the default work priority that will be used in case of the work template has no specific work priority. Now let's navigate to the warehouse management parameters and review the available options. The first one is retain temporary work table. This option is used to keep the temporary work table that are created while processing the work. So while creating the works, the system generates temporary line for worker processing. When the work is completed, then these temporary lines will be removed. When this option is enabled, then the records from WHS temp work line table are copied into WHS temp work line history before they are deleted. You can review the temporary records that are created from the temporary work history page that found in warehouse management module work, then temporary work history. The next option is enable work creation history log. When this option is enabled, then you can keep a history of all the created works where you can review the evaluated work conditions and whether the work is generated or failed. From performance perspective, and since inserting a logs is time consuming, then the enable work creation history log will be automatically turned off 7 days after you enable it. The date on which the log will be disabled is also shown here. Log automatically turns off. So it's recommended to enable it only in case if you are encountering an error message and you would like to review the created history log to figure out the reason. When the work creation history log option is enabled, then you can review the work creation history log that found in warehouse management module, work, then work creation history log. Here in the message column, you can review the outcome messages and whether they failed or succeeded while creating the works and while evaluating the available location directive rules and the work templates. The last option in the work tab is unregister receipt while canceling work. This option is used to unregister the received quantity when the purchase order work is cancelled. I just created this purchase order for this line, and then I managed to receive this purchase order line through the mobile application. If we reviewed the inventory transactions right now, so the inventory transaction is registered. Let's navigate to the created works. Here, this is the work that's still open, and the warehouse worker should pick the item from the receiving area and move it to the bay door location, which is this location. I'll cancel this work right now, and then I'll go back and check the inventory transactions, and now the inventory transactions back to ordered once again. Now let's recap what we discussed in this session. So first, we reviewed how to define and configure the work templates. Then we reviewed the available options that are available in the work template form. And then how to configure and process the work breaks using the maximum values and the work break headers. And at the end, we reviewed the work options that are available in the warehouse management parameters. Thank you for watching and your time. Stay tuned for the next lesson. Feel free to reach out if I can help. Take care and good luck.